Good morning and happy Hanukkah. Today is Wednesday, the 27th day of Kislev, the third day of Hanukkah. The third day of Hanukkah is also the day that the Alter Rebbe came out from prison a second time. Not everybody knows that. We celebrate the 19th of Kislev, Yutes Kislev, but the Alter Rebbe was arrested a second time. And although it wasn't so harsh imprisonment, but the charges were harsher about the teachings of Hasidus. And he came out on the day of the third day of Hanukkah, he came home. So today, let's start the Tanya Shir with Tzedakah, Gedei Tzedakah, Shemekarev Esesa Geula. Today we're starting chapter 4 in Likutei Amarim Tanya, and the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about the garments of the soul. So to recap, the Alter Rebbe begins the Tanya with the fact that we have two souls, a godly soul and an animal soul. And he begins by explaining what is the godly soul first, and he explained in chapter 2 the essence of the soul, that this is a part of Hashem. Hashem, God put a part of him in us. And that is beyond understanding, is the essence of every Jew is connected essentially with God. Then in chapter 3, the Alter Rebbe started to analyze what is the soul, what is the godly soul, how does it function, and he explained that there is 10 faculties to the soul, the godly soul, and the 10 faculties are similar to what the regular soul has. It is the faculties of the intellectual faculties and the emotive faculties. And the intellect births the emotions. When you understand something, it creates an emotion of either love or hate or other types of emotions. And the Alter Rebbe goes on to say, now about the garments of the soul. Now, what are the garments of the soul? What is the soul wearing? What does it mean, garments of the soul? So just like when you're talking about garments, what is a garment? A garment is the clothes that you wear. You look at a person, first thing you see the clothing. You see how he dresses. What does the clothes do? The clothes express the person. Express who the person is. If you want to portray a certain image of a person, you put him on certain clothing that expresses who the person, what he is. Obviously, clothing also conceal. There's another aspect of the clothing. A clothing is something that you can take off and put on at will. Whenever you want, you can take off dirty clothes, you can put on a clean clothes. So when you have the soul, unlike the faculties of the soul that cannot be changed, the logic and the emotions, this is part of the soul itself. But the way the soul expresses itself is expresses through these three things. It reveals itself through the thinking, through speaking, and through action. Thinking, you're more revealing yourself to yourself. That you have a certain emotion, and you want to reveal it to yourself, you think about that emotion. What am I feeling right now? Speaking is more something that you already speak to the outside. You reveal the soul to outside of you. And the speech, the words that you use, they can conceal and they can reveal. Depending on what you speak. Sometimes you speak words that don't mean anything. So because the words, they are supposed to carry out something from deeper, something inside. So when you listen to a speech, let's say you're fascinated from the speech. What are you fascinated? From the words or from the message that is carried out? Obviously from the message. You see, so the words, they carry out the message to the point that sometimes, let's say if you're dual lingual, if you speak Russian and English, for example, and you go to a lecture and they give you a fascinating message, sometimes they'll ask you, what language did the speaker speak? And not necessarily you will remember because you didn't focus on the words, you focused on the message. So the message, the dibur, the speech brings out the soul, the inner part of the soul. And the same thing is with action. If action is another form, the way the soul works and expresses itself through the action. So the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us about how the godly soul expresses itself. What is this words, the thoughts, the speech and action of the godly soul? It is when it's used purely on godly things, understanding the Torah and doing the mitzvahs, speaking the Torah and mitzvahs. So let's see inside what the Alter Rebbe explains. In addition to its 10 faculties, what we just said, the 3 intellectual and the 7 emotive attributes, that is discussed in chapter 3, every divine soul, every nefesh elokis, possesses 3 garments. What are the 3 garments? The garments are the thought, speech, and action as they find expressions in the 613 commandments of the Torah. God commanded us 613 commandments. And this number is there for a reason, because it actually corresponds to the 613 organs of the person. And not only organs of the person, the physical organs, there are also the spiritual organs. The soul also has spiritual organs. The 613 ways that their soul can express itself, and they fit with their body, and they fit with the mitzvahs just like a glove. For when a person actively fulfills all the precepts, which requires physical action, any mitzvah that is action, you put on tefillin, you shake the lulav, you put on the tzitzis, any mitzvah you do that with action. And with the power of speech, he occupies himself in expanding all the 613 commandments and the laws governing their fulfillments. So when you study the Torah, you study about the details of each particular law, which corresponds to a different part of your neshama, of your soul. And with the power of thought, he comprehends all that is capable of understanding in pardes, meaning the 4 levels of Torah. So the thoughts also connect, is the expression of the different organs of the Torah through understanding every part of the Torah in every level of the Torah. And generally, there are the 4 levels, the pshat and remez, drush and sod. Pshat is the simple understanding, the simple meaning, the plain sense. Remez is intimation, the certain hints that the Torah alludes to. The drush is homiletical expositions in the Torah. Then you have the sod. The sod is the esoteric meaning. The Kabbalah, the Hasidus, the deeper meaning. So every person is connected with the Torah in every part of the Torah. Even when you study the Torah just on the basic level, and you're not studying the other parts, you're missing out a major part of your neshama that is not affected. You need to be included in every part of the Torah. Even the Maimonides, the writes also that when it comes to the secrets, the mystical part of the Torah, says you should first fill yourself up, your stomach, with all of the teachings of the revealed part of the Torah, and then go to the mystical part of the Torah. So, but then in the same time, the Maimonides himself, in the beginning of the Mishnah Torah, he writes about all the mysticals, the Ma'aseh Merkava. He talks about this, and he talks about that a child should also learn. So it seems like a contradiction in the Maimonides. And the Rebbe explains that it's not a contradiction. When he's talking about going and that not to study until you fill everything up, this is talking about letayel, it says taking a walk, like you're walking in a garden, filling yourself up with all these Kabbalistic things. This is something you need to first learn the other parts of the Torah. But the basics to understand, this is part of the Torah. It's an important thing to know. It's in order to know what is God, in order to know what is fear of Hashem, what is love of Hashem. You have to know the basic and study the deeper meaning, the sod of the Torah. But in any case, so this is what he says, that the garment, the garment of thoughts is by enclothing yourself, filling yourself up with understanding the entire Torah with all the four parts. And obviously, as it'll say, not every person is capable of understanding to the fullest. Everyone in their own level, in the way their soul is connected. So what happens with the garments of the soul when you're involved in this, using this, the thought, speech, and actions for the Torah, so then all of the soul's 613 organs are clothed in the 613 commandments of the Torah. We'll be pratus, I'm going more detail specifically. The levels of Chabad, of his soul, meaning the intellectual faculties, Chochma, Bina, and Das, Melubasha is Be'asaga Satiro Shu Masik. They're enclosed in the comprehension of the Torah, which he comprehends. The way he understands in the pardes of the Torah, the four levels, to the extent of his mental capacity and according to the supernal root of his soul. So the way not everybody is equally capable to understand, and also the root of the soul is some people, their soul is more connected with a simple understanding, so their focus is more on that. So they have to learn everything, but the focus is based on what the soul is connected. So this is the way the intellect is enclosed in the learning of the Torah. Now says the Alter Rebbe, not only the intellect, also the other faculties of the soul. The motive faculties, the love and fear and so on, the branches of them, they're also enclosed in the fulfillment of the mitzvahs. And we'll explain why. Says the Alter Rebbe, Ve'amidos, and the midos, namely the emotions of fear and love of the Almighty, fear and love of Hashem, together with their offshoots and ramifications, the different types of emotions that are offshoots of the fear and love. They are melubashes bekiyum hamitzvos b'maisa b'dibur shetalmud Torah shekeneged kolam. They are clothed in the fulfillment of the commandments in deed and in words. And in word. In word meaning the study of the Torah, which is the equivalent of all the commandments. And the question is, what does it mean? Why is midas? I understand why the intellect is clothed in the study of the Torah and doing the mitzvahs, but what about the midas? The emotions are also part of it. So the Alter Rebbe is going to explain that if you're doing an act, if it's lacking the emotions, then the act is not done fully. Think about giving flowers to your wife. Like they said, the other guy, the guy who had marriage problems, he went to the rabbi, he asked, what should I do? So the rabbi told him, go Friday, get flowers to your wife. And he comes home Friday and gives her the flowers. It says, the rabbi told me to buy your flowers here. You're doing the act, but where's the feeling? Where's the love? Where's the passion? It's lacking. So you need to have, and you do the same thing with the mitzvah. You can do the act of the mitzvah, but if it's missing the feeling and the emotions, the connecting to Hashem, the fear and the love of Hashem, then the mitzvah does not have the same sustenance. It's not done fully. Of course, it says when you do a mitzvah, it's important to do the mitzvah. And even if you don't do it properly, because eventually it's going to lead you to do the mitzvah properly. But ideally, in order to do the mitzvah properly, you have to do it with the full emotions. And as the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, there is the positive emotions, the love that leads to the fulfillment of the active mitzvahs, the positive mitzvahs, the mitzvahs of do that we are supposed to do. And then there's the negative, the feelings of fear and dread that leads to the fulfillment of the prohibitions. As the Alter Rebbe explains, Ki ahava is sheirish kol ramach mitzvahs eseh. For love is the root of a Jew's observance of all the 248 positive commandments. And from it they issue forth, from the love, the positive mitzvahs come out. And without it, they have no true substance. Kiyum means substance. Kiyum means also it's not lasting. It's not sustained without the doing it properly with the love. Why? For he who fulfills them in truth is he who loves God's name and who truly desires to cleave to him. Now one cannot truly cleave to him except through the fulfillment of the 248 positive commandments. That's how you cleave to Hashem. Because after all, the distance between us and God is endless. The only one to initiate the connection is Hashem. When Hashem gives us and the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs are called the 248 commandments. They are called the organs of the king, the organs of Hashem. So just like an organ, what is an organ? The organ, the soul is drawn, it draws and expresses itself through the organs, like the eyes. The eye is the organ that brings out the sight, and every organ in the body is a way to bring out another aspect of the soul. The same thing as Hashem brings out His will through the 248 commandments. And to connect to Hashem, to cleave to Hashem, is through the organs that He gives us. Each mitzvah expresses a different aspect of God's will. For they are the 248 organs of the King, of God, the King of the universe, as it were, as explains elsewhere. And the same thing is also when it comes to the prohibitions. It says the Alter Rebbe, "Vayira yishoresh l'shasal lo yisaseh." The fear is the root of one's observance of the 365 prohibitive commandments. Why? Because when you realize the greatness of Hashem, you do not want to go against the king. Because for he, the God-fearing person, will fear to rebel against the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, by acting in defiance of His will. He will therefore refrain from anything that God forbade. That's one level of fear. So at this level, the word fears is taken in its simple sense. Trepidation before the severity of God's command. But then there's also a deeper level of fear. The deeper level of fear is, he says, when you feel ashamed before God's presence and you don't want to do something that He hates, and also the fact that you know that when you do something negative, it feeds the negative forces, as the Alter Rebbe explains. Or a deeper level of fear, that he feels ashamed before God's greatness. so that they will not rebel against the all-seeing eyes of his glory by doing what is evil in his eyes. Namely, any of the abominable things hated by God, which are the klipos and sitrach, anything which goes against Hashem, which conceals godliness, which is the other side, which is the opposite of holiness. Where do they get their nourishment? The forces of the evil, the forces of the opposite. They get the nourishment when a person does something bad, because they don't have their own source of life, of sustenance. But when a person does something which goes against Hashem, that itself gives them energy. Which draws their nurture from man below in this world and have their hold in him, so that they be able to derive their nurture and life through him, through his violations of the 365 prohibitive commandments. So that's the end of today's shir, explaining the fact of the garments of the soul. And the beautiful thing is that when we call it a garment, we understand, just like we said, the garment is something that you can put on and you can take off. You can put on a garment, a positive thought. And you have free choice of putting on not a good thought. But the point is, even if you have a bad thought, you can immediately remove it. You cannot stop thinking, but you can choose what to think. If you have if the thoughts is not clean, throw it out. Grab another clean cloth. Grab a thought of Torah. Have some positive thoughts in your mind, in your reserve. That's why many times the Rebbe encouraged the previous Rebbe to memorize words of Torah, ideas of Torah. Memorize those things. Keep them in the reserve. If something comes, switch it. Put on the new clothes. Put on a clean clothes. Same thing is with speech. Sometimes we let ourselves go, we speak some nonsense, and you realize, wait a second, though this is not a clean clothing, this is not clean speech, let me change. Switch it around. This is you wearing the godly soul's clothes. So have a wonderful Hanukkah, and we shall see you tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem.